Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Tom Wells here. Today is Monday, September the 3rd, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Your first daily dose of happy for this day and for this Labor Day. It's Labor Day weekend here in the United States. A day that has been part of our experience for, I think it's about 70 years now, if I remember correctly. But Labor Day celebrates the work of people every day in their everyday lives, doing their jobs and giving them a day off, saying, "Hey, congratulations for doing your job all this time." So, happy Labor Day, everybody! How you doing, Tom?
Happy Labor Day. Here we are working on Labor Day.
Can you believe that? I mean, I tell you, what we have a slave driver for our boss, don't we?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of other days that I don't work, but actually, my whole life usually feels like work.
Well, that's what I'm trying to change. I'm trying to change that feeling because you're right.
Well, I have a lot of play too, but I know. Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Because that's it. You labeled it right there. When it starts to feel like work, and it does so often for so many of us, it's a signal that, hey, this is a time to change the way it feels. Can we change the way it feels? It changes its nature. It changes what you do with it, how often you do it, when you do it, why you do it. It changes the whole feel of the thing. And so, I mean, you nailed it. That's exactly what it is. Well, that's what we got to change right there.
Yeah, well, it's I call it I'm creating play shops instead of workshops.
There you go. I like that.
Well, yeah, and when people come to try to work with us all as a group to say, can we turn this into a fun, playful time instead of a heavy duty, intense thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's kind of what our podcast is about today.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's true. It's been an interesting weekend, too, a good weekend. Actually, I started an experiment last night. I told Anne-Marie about it. But over the weekend, I read an article that talks about 4 different ways to raise your happiness level based on research by positive psychologists. And the list was interesting. I mean, 3 of the items on the list, they're not going to surprise you. They didn't surprise me anyway. The 4th one surprised me. The first one is think happy, positive thoughts, which we LOA practitioners know, yep, that's the basic, right? That's what we're trying to do. So we know that one works. The second one is diet, which curiously enough, that one is actually controversial. As I was telling Anne-Marie yesterday, the controversy is that there's so much stuff out there. You can find lots of pages about foods you can eat that will make you feel better, that will help increase your levels of serotonin. And serotonin is the happy neurotransmitter. That's the one that makes us feel happy all the time whenever we're feeling happy. But it turns out that there is a flaw in the dietary approach, which is that all the serotonin gets created in our gut, and there's some sort of a blood-brain barrier that prevents it from getting to the brain. So the question is, are we really getting the benefit of creating all that serotonin with all these foods that we're eating? So the researcher says, well, there's certainly a lot of promise here, but the jury's still out. Let's not say that just because we figured out that tryptophan will help create serotonin, that therefore we've licked the problem of feeling better. We may not have actually licked it yet, interestingly enough. But so that's the second one. The third one is exercise. Again, no surprise there, particularly to anyone who trains hard and gets the athlete effect, right? The high, the runner's high, that kind of thing. Sure. That definitely will help make you feel happier. The fourth one is the one that really surprised me. That is bright light. It turns out that at least 3,000 lumens of light in your immediate environment will actually increase your happiness levels, which kind of makes sense. I mean, we all kind of know to some degree that, a dark room just doesn't feel as good as a light room. But I didn't realize that it needed to be that bright. 3,000 lumens is pretty bright. I mean, a single 60-watt bulb is like 600 to 800 lumens. So what we're talking about here is a room full of lights to really brighten up the room. That's how bright we're talking about. We're talking about brighter than a typical sunny day.
Wow.
Which is interesting.
Well, I don't know if you're really brighter than a sunny day.
Yes.
How can we create that? Well, I guess we can create that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, your typical sunny day is about 2,500 to 3,000 lumens, and over 3,000 is what you're aiming for. And if you have a day where you have blinding sun on a snowscape, that gets up to like 10,000 lumens. So a sunny day can get really, really bright depending, on the environment. But your typical sunny day is somewhere around 2,500, 3,000 lumens, something like that.
Yeah, it's also, they say for your eyes that if you want your eyes to stay really healthy, that you need a lot of light on. You don't just need the one light on the thing you're reading. You need you need like lights on across the room and other parts of the room. It actually
Yeah, ambient light, as they call it.
helps you. It helps your eyes a whole lot to not become overstressed, and you're not working them then as hard as you would if you just had that one or two lights that are in the area that you're in.
So
I didn't never know that before about keeping your eyes healthy.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And I guess also we shouldn't be surprised by that one either. But
Yeah.
anyway, I went out and bought a bunch of high intensity light bulbs to put in all the lamps in the office here. So I got a brighter office, and it's significantly brighter, I have to say. It's good.
You sound so much brighter today.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. I really appreciate that.
And don't forget, number 5 on the list should be go outside and be in nature.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
That's like a huge one for me. Of course, that's my go-to. That's what I did yesterday. Went up the mountains for about 5 hours. It was fantastic.
Wow, yeah. Yeah.
Sat around.
Well, that kind of combines 3 and 4, exercise and light, all combined.
Yeah, I actually wanted to get a lot of exercise, so I walked an extra long distance, but then I just also sat for a really long time in a couple of spots on rocks and things where I was reading, preparing for our podcast a little bit.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned reading because I was doing a little reading too. Cindy Chavez and I have been doing lately a few episodes about very wealthy people, rather famous wealthy people, with the idea that so often we have negative mindsets about the wealthy. And so we figured, well, let's focus on positives that have come from wealthy people. So we've been talking about people like J.K. Rowling. I've been mispronouncing her name all this time. J.K. Rowling, or Ralph Lauren. People you don't really think of as being multi-billionaires, but they are. They're wealthy people, and they're also they're benefactors of mankind in many ways, and there are a whole list of people like that.
Nice.
One of the people we've talked about, kind of in general, and that we're thinking about doing a show on, is Oprah Winfrey. And I got a book out of the library by Oprah Winfrey called "What I Know for Sure." And I've just been reading the first few chapters of it. It's a collection of little snippets, so to speak, of what she finds to be, an answer to the question, what have you found to be true in your life for sure? Or is that the way that, I guess it was Gene Siskel, the late movie reviewer, once asked her the question, and let's see, where was the question? Yeah, what do you know for sure? That was the question. Tell me, what do you know for sure? And her response in her book was, well, now this was not my first rodeo. I've been asked an awful lot of questions over the years, and it isn't often that I find myself at a complete loss for words, but I have to say the man managed to stop me in my tracks. Well, that became the basis for her book. So she wrote a book of all these little things about what she knows for sure. And I got to tell you, Tom, the first few chapters, I swear, it's straight out of the LOA manual. It really is.
A lot of people arrive at the LOA understandings. I notice that.
Yeah. I mean, the very first little chapter is called Joy, about how important it is to be joyful. And then she tells a whole series of these little things about being joyful and how important it is to celebrate things and dance when you have the chance to dance and so forth. I'm thinking, my God, this is perfect LOA stuff. So I haven't gotten really far into it, but I'm looking forward to the rest of that book.
That's awesome. Yeah. I've noticed that in watching a lot of documentaries, because I tend to watch a lot of that kind of stuff on this channel called Gaia.
Yes.
And so many of those documentaries, they come from people that are coming from a huge amount of divergent backgrounds when they're speaking about, whatever the topic of the show, maybe it's about a show about consciousness or about emotion or something. And so many of the people they interview reflect LOA understandings when they speak, but they're not necessarily, LOA. They don't book themselves as LOA people,
right?
But they're not even calling it law of attraction, but they're speaking the same exact understandings. It's so it's just this is a lot the way life works. If you call it the law of attraction, as if there really are laws. Of course, that can always be debated. Who's determined what a law is, but there are principles that seem to be consistently true, and when they're practiced, and we notice them happening in our lives, or we notice ourselves acting on those understandings. I think it's there are things that work. There are things that work better than other things, I think, and that's one thing. What we're talking about today.
So you're questioning whether or not the celestial legislature actually passed the law of attraction. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I am. Well, no, I read this thing about, like the idea of having laws is, can be sometimes a you have to sort of take a few steps back from that and go, do I want to call it a law, or do I want to call it, I don't know, a principle, or a way that energy tends to work? I don't know. There was, the whole thing was arguing that when you call something a law, you're boxing it in to, like in quantum physics, do we call these things laws, or do we call them something else, like the celestial dance, or
Yeah.
There was just questioning that idea of boxing it into that definition of law can actually be inhibiting in some way.
So you're saying that the law of attraction may not be a truly universal, apply in all cases law.
It's just the use of the word law and what it does to our consciousness. Like the suggestion was, use a word that's more liberating to our consciousness than law.
Oh, really?
It locks.
So you think you think law is limiting?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, I didn't think of it that way, but that's fine.
Yeah, from the perspective of an infinite being, do we really want to, like be telling ourselves we have laws we adhere to? It's sort of like, is there another way to say it? And of course, I hadn't thought that through about, well, how would I rather say it? But I guess, like call it a way to dance with life or something, a way to harmonize beautifully with who you really are, rather than there's strict laws underlying everything, and whether you like it or not. Although they tend to act that way. I mean, that's the way I do see it in my life. Whether I like it or not, I'm projecting my reality. And so therefore what I'm seeing, I'm projecting it, and so I can't get away from that fact. So then we call it's a law.
So basically, the viewpoint you're expressing there is one of, well, I don't want the law of attraction police to come after me.
Yeah, I don't want there to be this heavy feeling inside of my body, in my mind, about, there's this law out there, and no matter what I do, I'm going to be subject to it. And it's kind of asking ourselves, is that a way of thinking that evolved out of man's limited thinking or man's expansive thinking? And I think it's just suggesting there's a more expansive way to think about life than to call things laws, because they have a long history. That word has a long history of meaning if you don't do it, you're going to jail.
I think that's actually a fun way to look at it, though, what you're just saying right there, because, I mean, you are under arrest for violating the law of attraction.
As long as you have fun with it.
I mean, that's just quite funny.
Yeah. It's true. But if you take it heavy duty, like this damn law of attraction, it's like, it's like, who made this law?
Yeah, right.
I've heard Esther talk about it. That she talks to Abraham like, why does it have to be this way? You got to make an exception for me. I don't want to have the law of attraction apply in this situation.
Hey, I didn't vote for that law. Wait a minute. Who passed that law anyway?
Yeah. So that word is a loaded word, is what I'm saying. The lawmakers, all those people in Congress are lawmakers who we all respect so much.
You will obey our law.
Yeah, that's right. Take that heaviness out of it.
Well, you're right. It does tie into the topic, and I have to tell you, Tom, you come up with some of the most amazingly original topics. They're really, really excellent. I mean, the title of this one today, Dramatizing, Reacting Twice to Our Emotions, ? I mean, that's a really, there's obviously a lot of thought behind that one. And it's really true. Dramatizing is something that we humans do regularly. And interestingly enough, most of us who dramatize, and nearly everybody dramatizes, will keep pointing at somebody else and says, oh, well, there's such a drama queen. Right? It's always the other person who's doing it, right? It's not me.
Yeah. And what I'm asking here is, do we do this with ourselves in a way? That's that. Like, are we dramatizing silently in our heads when we, like this morning, I woke up and for some reason, this happens a number of mornings, I feel sort of a feeling in my gut that's kind of like terror or fear or anticipation or anxiety. You could say from one point of view, it's excitement, but from the point of view of how I'm feeling it, it feels more like, what am I so afraid of? I'm waking up. Why should I wake up and be afraid? One of the first things I notice. And And so then the question of this podcast is, do I then take and turn that feeling into a series of thoughts about why the heck am I feeling this way? What's this about? I felt this way so many times. I'm so sick and tired of this. Where am I ever going to get to the bottom of this? And why do I feel this way? And God, I don't like this feeling. And, it must be about my situation with, money or clients or my relationship, or this must be about, this health problem I have. So I start to extrapolate it, and then it's like I'm reacting twice to a feeling that my emotional guidance system has simply put in my guts. There's this feeling in my gut that emotional guidance system is giving me to bring me back in alignment with my love, with my higher self, with my heart, with my joy, with my good feeling, or whatever you want to call it, or just simply let it be. So anyway, I'm learning in my life to let a feeling come up, but not react to it with a whole bunch of thinking.
No, that's a good skill to have, because that way you get to decide what your reaction is going to be instead of just reacting with whatever comes first.
Right. Or you can decide to not react, in a sense, and just say, okay, there's this whole principle in psychology which says when you want to process a feeling, you just simply let yourself feel it. So, if that feeling comes up inside myself, what I'm doing now, and of course I've been doing this for years, but I'd forget to do it because I up until actually till this podcast, in a way, I really didn't really think about how many times I double react. I react twice to something. And I got this idea from somebody I was reading, that this idea of the double reaction. And some people just flat out call it beating yourself up, or just like why do you make your life extra stressful? Why don't you just feel the feeling? But I never thought before that, okay, just feel the feeling and it will guide me back into alignment, because it's just there to bring me back into alignment with my better feeling self. Mm-hmm. And so it will dissipate. But if I add to it, if I add angry thoughts to why I'm angry, and then I'm rejecting myself for having that feeling. I'm saying this is not okay that I have this feeling because it's a negative feeling. So therefore I find a way to like dramatize it inside my own self, or maybe I talk to somebody else from that place of saying, I always feel this way, and God, it was such a drag. I woke up this morning feeling this way, and man, I can't believe that I still go to this place. And then you were just adding insult to injury, you might say. So feeling the feeling, I just let myself have that feeling this morning, and I tried to be neutral about it, just witness it. And by the time I was downstairs getting ready for the podcast, it had only been 15 minutes, I was sitting on the couch and realizing, wow, that thing's gone. I don't feel that anymore.
Yeah, sure.
Just sort of went away.
Because you took away the charge of it.
Mm-hmm. And all the extra thoughts.
Yeah.
Because the extra thoughts are when we tell a story. And the story we tell ourselves, then it brings new feelings. So we're doing that thing of 17 seconds on, I put extra focus on it, and now it's bringing more thoughts about the same thing. But if we trust that feelings are our emotional guidance system, then we can let them come up, sit with them, feel it, say, okay, that doesn't feel that great, but it's a feeling. Sometimes I even just go, that's just a sensation in my stomach. Now, why do I need to label that I'm terrorized, or I'm really afraid of something, or I'm really angry at something? I don't have to call it those names. Sometimes we want to, we want to say, well, what is this, But if we say, well, it's my emotional guidance system telling me that somehow something's out of alignment, but let me just feel the feeling and let it guide me back. Let it take me back into alignment. And that's what happens. That's the amazing thing.
As you talked about that, I realized that the word dramatizing is a word that we tend to use in everyday conversation almost exclusively about negative emotion. But really, drama is about expressing emotion of any kind, positive or negative. And yet, how interesting that we tend to use the word dramatizing purely with negative. I mean, we actually, when you think about it, the law of attraction and how we apply it in our lives is all about dramatizing, both positive and negative. So when we are deliberately creating something by trying to focus on what it is that we want and focus on the thing rather than the lack of the thing and feeling good about it and all that kind of stuff, we're dramatizing. We just don't call it that.
Huh.
I'm not sure what we call it instead. We call it deliberate creation, I guess. But yeah,
Well, in Hollywood or in the theater industry, they call it comedy. There's they show
well, they do. Yeah,
the happy face and the sad face mask, and the happy face mask is supposed to be comedy.
but
So
that's
that
the point right there. Even when we
Mhm.
look at the positive stuff, you're absolutely right. Theater calls it either comedy or farce. In other
Yeah.
words, even both of those words have a charge to them that say, well, you can't really celebrate joy. You can't really dramatize joy. You can't dramatize happy. You can't
Mm.
dramatize satisfaction. You can't dramatize love. You can only dramatize it if you come at it at an angle and make fun of it and laugh at it, or in some way turn it into a farcical situation. So even there, we're still trying to turn it into a negative,
Uh, maybe so.
which is really
Yeah.
interesting to me.
Uh-huh.
In fact,
And
it's so interesting to me that for the longest time I've wondered about what it takes to change the way we think of storytelling. I mean, there's two kinds of storytelling, right? There's the kind that Abraham talks about: tell a better feeling story about your life. So it isn't really a story in the sense of the story of Mary Poppins or the story of Jurassic Park or something like that. It's more like I feel better, I feel rich, I like this, I prefer that. It's not really a story that goes anywhere. It's just better talk to yourself. So that's the kind of story they're talking about. But the other kind is like the Hollywood story, the theatrical story, the movie story, where there's a
Mhm.
complete storyline and characters and so forth. And the thing
Yeah.
that I keep asking myself is, all of that theater and movies and all that kind of thing, they're all really good at dramatization, as we're using the word here. They're especially good at the negative stuff, and the positive stuff they turn into farce or comedy. Why isn't
Mhm.
there drama for good feeling stuff? Why isn't there some form for that? There should be, in my mind.
Right, right. That's what we've been talking about since you started focusing long ago on, let's have a lot of stories that we tell.
Right, right.
And we talked about that several times, you and I, about how can we begin to move into creating that new art form, you might say, of stories that don't have to have this intense negative thing happen before the positive thing can happen.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
However, in our lives, there's so much, even just listening to Abraham, where they talk about, look, there's always going to be contrast. And so as soon as you arrive at something you've been wanting and you've finally allowed that to manifest in your life, then you start wanting the next thing. And then as you start wanting the next thing, then you start feeling the lack of it. And then you start planning how you're going to get there. And you start being on this new journey that then has the contrast of you're not there yet. And so we then sometimes create something that we could call contrast,
Mm-hmm.
and whether we have to label it negative or not. But there's a feeling, there's a feeling part of us, this emotional guidance system thing, is what I'm so fascinated by these days, because I never feel like Abraham ever describes it as a negative thing to have an emotional guidance system. So if an emotion comes up, now I'm just trying to see it as that's my source self simply expressing something through me that will guide me back into alignment. It'll guide me into greater clarity. It'll open up new vistas inside myself as I let myself feel the feeling,
Mm-hmm.
instead of deny the fact that my emotional guidance system is giving me a feeling which I've labeled negative. And that's why, this podcast, do you want to feel more fear about your fear, or do you want to just feel the feeling and say, well, that is just a sensation in my guts, or a sensation, maybe it's a pain in my neck, and I'm having a pain in my neck, but that's a feeling, and feel the feeling and don't necessarily label it, and then see if it dissipates. Sometimes we put our hand on it, and I mean, I do. And then I go, okay, what is this? Let me see. This feels really bad, or this hurts a lot. But okay, so something's come up inside me. Let me just let it tell me, let it show me what it is that I need to get from this. It's amazing how many messages there are in our feelings if we just let them be.
And,
That's
and
what I'm saying.
and you mentioned the Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks emotional guidance system scale. Even that scale, I mean, you said it's not usually presented as if it were a negative scale, but even that scale, maybe 7 or 8 of the items are positive, 14 to 15 of them are negative. So even the
Right.
scale is weighted toward negative, which is really, really interesting to me. Because to
Yeah.
me, that suggests it really shows just how negatively oriented we get.
Well, that's the
We have
thing
all
that
these
I've
words
always
for it,
complained about. Yeah.
you know?
Hmm.
I mean, if it's truly a balanced thing, shouldn't it have a balanced number of words on either side?
And why couldn't we name more categories of joy,
Yeah, we
more
should.
categories of happiness? And I really believe that's that question you have about couldn't Hollywood create movies? And I think they have, that there are movies like that out there where they try to build on one positive thing upon another positive thing. But usually there always has to be a crisis and somebody falls in the river or dies or gets otherwise traumatized. And
Right.
then you can do all the work that gets you back to happiness. And it's all that it's going through the drama and getting back to the happiness where all the joy, where all the fun is, in the movie. That's where what makes people come and watch it is they get to see somebody go through this big catharsis or this big trauma that maybe they recover from, maybe they don't.
Mm-hmm.
But but
And
that's where all the
the
joy is, watching the movie.
the interesting thing too, from my perspective, is on those occasions where they do create a movie that's largely positive without any kind of major trauma going on, that movie inevitably gets labeled as a children's movie
Yeah, or a bad movie.
or a bad movie, one or the other. Yeah,
Boring movie.
yeah. To me, here's where I think the rubber really meets the road about what I'm talking about here, what we're talking about here. The fact is, if we were to create, or if somebody were to create a movie where there were these bad things going on, and somebody, as a main protagonist, was not reacting badly to them, and critics would treat that as a really, really bad movie.
Well, I don't know. And that, yeah, I know what you're saying, but I bet you there are movies out there where people have demonstrated ways of reacting. I remember that karate show that was always on television back in the day. I don't know, can't remember the name of it, but it was a real karate guy who played the star. I almost got his name there, but
Like Bruce
you
Lee
know,
or Jackie Chan or something like that.
it was another guy. But anyway, he did a lot of things in that television show where he reacted to things more like you would expect a martial arts master to react.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, when somebody attacks a martial arts master, one of the main thing they do is they stay calm.
Mm-hmm.
And they, like Aikido is based entirely on
True. Yeah.
using your body to defer the blow that's coming towards you
To
so
deflect
that
it. Yeah.
it goes back to the person who threw the blow,
Right.
and then throws them off balance. And then a Kaido master can somehow then win the competition or whatever it is, the
Right.
fight,
Yeah. Which is an interesting thing.
without ever going into this real aggressive thing.
Yep. Yep. And yet, to me, that the fact that somebody can take a bad situation and turn it into one where they're not going to react badly, and instead they're going to find something good, perhaps, about it. As bad of a movie as the critics would consider that to be, I think it's actually a pretty cool movie.
It would be great because we could start learning from watching the example of others how they handle situations without turning it into um, drama,
Yeah.
without over dramatizing it, right? Without reacting, and that's what we do when we dramatize. We react to the point where it's like we act out.
Mm-hmm.
We create it in a way that it's not really in the best interest of ourselves or the other people that we're doing it. And like when we're doing it out loud, that's when feelings get hurt. That's when people get, relationships get destroyed and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. Jobs, you get fired from your job if you overreact and you dramatize. Or if we're in a crowd of people at the restaurant and there's one person who's learned to dramatize everything, they become the center of attention. But it's like, people are feeling sorry for that person in a way because they're so hooked into their drama about the thing they're talking about in their life, and although that's a pretty common conversation, is everyone then starts to, oh yeah, I know, man, it's such a drag
Right.
that the president did that. And oh my God, can you believe this guy's our president? And,
Yeah. Right.
and all that drama goes on, but does it do any good for anybody?
Well, apparently it does. They feel like they're going to do some good on some level because they keep doing it. People just keep going back to it over and over and over again, and not just the president, but anything. I mean, whatever it is that's going on in their lives. In fact, it's a fascinating thing how many actors How many Hollywood actors and Broadway actors and theater actors of all kinds, they get into acting because, among other things, they love the idea of playing a bad guy role because they can do all these really nasty things without any actual negative consequences in their lives. Which is a fascinating thing. I mean, it's a little sick, but nevertheless, it's fascinating.
Yeah, but by the law of attraction, are they actually going to end up messing up themselves?
I've wondered
I
the
almost
same thing. I've
wonder
wondered
that
exactly
about
that.
people
And
that play bad guys all the time.
you see it too. I mean, how many actors have played really rough roles and then shortly afterward died? I mean, the one that comes to my mind quickest, a guy named John Spencer, played in a television series here in the United States called The West Wing, which actually got some pretty good coverage around the world too. Martin Sheen played the president. His chief of staff was played by John Spencer. And one of the main scenes later on in the series was where John Spencer's character, Leo McGarry, suffers a heart attack at Camp David and does so out in the woods where nobody knows that he's there. So he's actually left behind when everybody goes back to the White House and they send a security team to find him. And sure enough, they find him and take him to the hospital and so forth.
Hmm.
Well, shortly after that episode was filmed and put in the can, so to speak, I think it was like within a year or so, John Spencer died of a heart attack.
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah,
whoa.
and you wonder. Yeah, no, I know.
Now that's a very overt version of a very overt thing, but I think of like Alan Rickman. Alan Rickman, who played Professor Snape in the Harry Potter series, and played a whole. I mean, he was quite a character actor. Played a lot of really interesting roles, a few positive roles, but most of them were on the negative side. And he ended up dying of cancer in his 60s. And
Hmm.
I mean, he just kept playing all these dark roles. I kept
Yeah.
thinking, what's that doing to him?
I've heard that about Johnny Depp right now,
Johnny Depp, yeah, there's another one.
that he's going through something like that.
Yeah.
And I wondered because he always played really extreme, psychotic almost characters,
Hmm.
like people that were really extreme in their way that they acted and expressed themselves.
And then I look
Yeah,
at somebody like Betty White, who doesn't ever play really dark characters that I can think of. Now she's a television actress, but the
right.
roles she plays they're often silly. Sometimes they're kind of self-destructive. So it's not like there's no drama in the characters. There are dramas, but nevertheless, her characters for the most part have either a comedic side or a farcical side or something to laugh at or feel good about, even if there is a dark side to it. There's always a light side to her characters, and she's a very happy woman living. I think she's in her 90s now. I
Oh,
mean,
at least.
yeah. I mean,
Well,
and just
if she's still alive. Is she still alive?
oh, I think she is. Yeah. Well, she
Hmm.
actually just was recently in the last 10 years or so doing a series. I can't think of what it was called. Something in Cleveland. But
Hmm.
I mean, and she's considered a legend among the other younger television actors now.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, what a career she's had, and she has somehow found a way, managed to take on roles that make her feel good instead of roles that tear her down. And
Hmm.
I give her a lot of credit for that. It's not easy to do in the environment that we've been describing.
Yeah, yeah. She just gets into that just one type of character.
Well, actually, she doesn't. Actually, her characters are quite varied. That's what's so
But
interesting
but
about
they're
her.
all but you're saying they're always have
But
something
they always
positive
have a positive side to them. Yeah.
to their expression. But I think a lot of those actors they do just act a lot the way they really are. It's
Yeah.
called
Well,
there's a name for that in Hollywood.
well, she is a very positive person. There's no doubt
Hmm.
about that. She has
Hmm.
just an uplifting viewpoint on life, and she was basically involved in television at the very, very beginning. So she was there. She's been there throughout, including the golden age of TV and right up through the modern day. So phenomenal career, just really phenomenal. But just an amazing personality too. Just
Hmm.
a very positive outlook on life.
Hmm.
Really impressive.
So the question is with dramatizing is whether or not that it does us any good. And some people feel like when they're dramatizing it, they're just expressing themselves, and they feel very justified in doing so. And so, there's kind of like a double standard. I think that one standard says it's good to express yourself. I mean, I have a friend who, when he talks, he tends to this tone of his voice raises often if he has a point he wants to make.
Mm.
And so he therefore gets a little bit louder than everybody else in the room. But he tends to sort of also become the center of attention and dominate the conversation because his insistence on his logic becomes the go-to in the room. You've got to listen to this particular guy because he's going to be talking, like, well, that's exactly what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying it. You can't go there, and then
you will listen and you will listen now.
Yeah. And he's so passionate about it. And there's a belief, I think, that a lot of people have that's, wow, he really expresses himself. But in reality, it's a way of literally also denying what the actual feeling is behind it, because you're not accepting the fact that there's just anger there, and that anger thinks it needs to dramatize, and therefore he's not really just being in touch with the fact that there's just this anger inside him and letting himself, like recent things I've had with my partner, I've said some things that are like that to her, and then realize that I don't want to do that with her because it's hurtful, and it's hurtful to me. And so, sort of don't act it out. Just know that, yes, I'm having a strong reaction, but there's a way to deal with that inside myself rather than project it onto somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we can do that with ourselves too.
Sure.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have to turn it into a dramatic way of talking to ourselves.
Well, and this is kind of why I was bringing up the whole question of what dramatizing means earlier on, because we do tend to use the word dramatizing regarding all the negative stuff. But I also wonder, can't we use dramatizing on the positive stuff? Because the same kind of effect can happen. If let's imagine what happens if we're deliberate creating, right? And we're doing it in the quote right way, unquote, meaning that we are focusing on what we want. We're doing it with positive feelings, positive emotions, and we're doing it over and over and over again. And we're reapplying it, reapplying it. Isn't that dramatizing? Isn't it? Because dramatizing, it's like you said, it's reacting twice to our emotions. Well, actually, it's reacting multiple times to our emotions. That's what happens in a really, quote, dramatic, unquote, movie. That, there's a bad scene, and then there's the corollary to the bad scene, and then there's the alternative to the bad scene, and the bad scene that morphs into another bad scene, and right. That's the way drama works, right? Well, why not apply the same principle to positive? I just believe that there's got to be a way to do it, and I think there actually is. I think we're learning how to do that. As deliberate creators, that's part of what we're learning, because when we apply the same approach of reacting multiple times to positive emotions, we're doing the best deliberate creation we can do. And, by the way, as a little side effect, we're living a fun, joyous life at the same time.
Yeah, as long as we're not doing it in order to pave over the what we're trying to run from, like if we're trying to flee from feeling the bad feeling. I think it's important to feel the bad feeling, let it dissipate, and then, I think it's great what you're saying. Like, I've done that so many times, and they literally teach that now in a lot of workshops and things, which is get yourself to really feel the good feeling, because I think a lot of our society trains us that old, I call it like the Protestant work ethic or something. It's that old Calvinist way of staying really sober rather than expressing yourself, because it's, that even a lot of us as kids, we got chided for being overly expressive, like calm down, no, you don't need to like get so excited about it. But kids get excited, and then they get more excited, and they get more excited.
Yeah.
And that's something that slowly is bred out of us as we go to school and we become more and more sober adults who are supposed to be balanced and calm, and we learn to deliver all of our lines in a more, calm and stable and sober way. And then you have to relearn if you want to really be excited about your life. You've got to relearn how to say things in an excited way.
Isn't it interesting, though? I mean, you said it really well. You said, I don't remember exactly what the wording is, but the gist of it was, we don't want to focus on all those positives if it means covering up our negatives. And that is
Mm-hmm.
exactly the viewpoint that so many people maintain. I mean, it's very common, for instance, in the therapeutic world. Therapists are all about making sure you don't bury those negative feelings. Here's the
Yeah.
really interesting question, though, from my perspective. Why is it they never talk about the reverse? Why is it they never talk about burying your positive feelings by focusing on your negative feelings? Because to me, the principle works both ways. I don't really
Oh,
see how it's
yeah.
just one direction. I think it's two directional.
Well, I think the thing is just the question that I have, is there simply an emotional guidance system or not? And that's the key to everything right now in my life, is that, look, if there is a divinely ordained, so to speak, a source originated instead of divinely ordained, you call it either, whatever, but is there a source originated emotional guidance system that is always giving me a feeling that is guiding me? So if I'm getting a feeling of peace, or I'm getting a feeling of ease, or I'm getting a feeling of relaxation, or getting a feeling of excitement or joy or bliss, or am I getting a feeling of anger or sadness or fear? You know, if you want to label whatever the feeling is, sometimes all these things are just a sensation in us, but then we give it a name.
Right, right.
Well, that's joy or that's anger. But it's actually, what it is, it feels like right now, it feels like a pain in my stomach and a heaviness in my chest, the thing is that if the emotional guidance system is really something that is source originated from our infinite self, that teaches us in this 3D realm how to move through our lives. So therefore, when the so-called negative thing comes up, it's not really negative. It's something teaching us something about getting back in alignment. When the so-called positive thing comes up, it's something that's showing us alignment. So all of it is showing us alignment. It's just that we have developed this second reaction where the second the negative thing comes up, we have all these different things we want to do to make sure we cover it over, deny it, or otherwise, say, I'm getting away from that negative thing as quickly as possible. I don't say that's wrong to get away from a negative thing, but sometimes in that denial of it, if we are denying it, we aren't letting it take us back into alignment. We're taking it into our mind. And the question is, does our body and heart know how to process it without it becoming a mental exercise?
I think the question really comes down to, where is the source energy? Because we are source energy. I mean,
Right.
that's who we are. We're part of that source energy field, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet we so often think of it as being like out there or in there, as if it were somehow separate from us. But it's not. We're really part of it, and it's part of us. So I like to take ownership of the whole concept. I like to take
Mm-hmm.
ownership of the idea of, when I am getting a feeling, it's not that I'm getting it from source energy, because I am source energy. I'm getting it from myself
Mm-hmm.
because I am source energy. And when I
Okay.
think of it that way, now I have a more connected feeling. I have a more
Mm-hmm.
connected feeling in that it's not just, it's not me against them. It's not me against my non-physical. It's not me against source
Mm-hmm.
energy. It's, I'm part of that. I become a part of the whole situation, and in becoming part of the whole situation, I actually get empowered, because
Mm-hmm.
now I realize that all is in my control. It's really up to me. And I am no longer subject to, oh my God, this terrible thing happened to me, and so I have this negative reaction. And now I have to, make sure I live within it and so forth. I mean, sure, fine, if that works for you, great, but I don't think that has to be the only way to do it. I think it actually can work very nicely to say, that's part of me. I choose that. And I chose that. And just as I chose it, I can choose something else.
Mm-hmm.
And when I start looking at it that way, now all of a sudden I think it becomes much easier to let go of the stuff I want to let go of. Because that's what we're
Mm-hmm.
really talking about. We're talking about stuff that, whether you talk about it as being negative that you're paving over, or you're talking about it as negative that hasn't been gone through, or whatever, what we're really talking about is negative we're trying to let go of. Well, we can let go of it. There are a lot of ways to let go of it. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
beauty of it, because
Yeah.
we are in control.
Yeah. Allowing it to be there. I think the big difference for me, as I just recently said, is whether or not I go into my mind with it or not. Because if I go into my mind and
Mm.
use my control there, I think that's short circuiting something that my body and my heart are better equipped to deal with. There's a place for the mind.
Even that I can't separate it that way.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's the same mistake as separating my physical me from the rest of me. My mind is part of who I am. My mind is part of that source energy field. It's not separate.
Mm-hmm.
And so saying that I'm going to treat it as if it were separate is just another way of creating a separation with me from the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's something to play with. I'm playing with it right now in my life.
I think we both are, really.
with the two. Yeah, yeah. And I suppose all of us, you could say, always are, because we always do have a choice, about every second. There, in a way, there's a choice. But sometimes when these things come up in me, like this morning, waking up, feeling that in my guts, I didn't feel like I had a choice about that. And even laying there in my bed, I didn't feel like, oh, I just make this go away with a different thought. I decided, I'm not going to just, create all these different ways of thinking to change this thing. I'm going to see what it wants to tell me. I'm going to just sit with it. I'm going to just let it be. I'm going to just feel into it. It's my new way of dealing with feelings, is that
which is great.
I just want to feel into it.
Yeah.
With joy and with good feelings, I'm doing the same thing. Like I've noticed, like yesterday I was driving in my car and all of a sudden I was overtaken with this feeling of how good I feel. And it was a really nice thing, like, oh, geez, I feel really good. What did I do? Drink some caffeine or something? Like, I feel really good. And, but then realizing, no, I didn't drink any caffeine. So this is just me feeling good, and then I just reveled in it.
Yeah.
And of course I was sitting up in the mountains yesterday and it was just so totally still. It was so quiet. It was amazing. And I just was sitting there and just feeling how good it feels to be in that place of such stillness, just incredible stillness. So feeling my feelings is really nice for me, to be sort of drop into my heart and be less into the constant analysis that I've trained my mind to do. Because over many years of, and many people would tell me this in the past, says, God, you think so much, you're in your head so much. And I go, really? I am. But then I've been looking at that over the years, and especially lately, because I think being in my head is the main reason why I make my life difficult, and why I think I have problems whenever I do, is because what I do with it in my mind. But when I just be in my heart, that's why last podcast it was about, can I just take something and sort of surround it with love, and just say I love you to it, and leave it at that. No matter what it is, that I just sort of take it into my heart and let it be, instead of feeling like I always have to come up with a better feeling story. If I feel something bad, I've always got to think of a better feeling story. And it becomes this task I give my mind that's an endless task of always going into my mind to deal with things rather than going into my heart and letting myself feel it in my body, and then seeing what my body, in its intelligence, knows to do with it.
That is the beauty of having so many different processes, because with all the different processes, we can pick and choose. We can say, nope, I'm not going to go with that one, but yep, I'm going to go with this one, and nope, I'm not going to go with that one, but yes, I'm going with this one instead. Yeah, and we can mix and match. We don't have to go with the same one every day. We can do whatever one works, and as long as it works, who cares how you got there? I mean, we use the story of the GPS. The analogy of the GPS. You're trying to travel from New York to Los Angeles, or vice versa. And, if you go off the track, the GPS will tell you, make a legal left-hand turn or a right-hand turn or whatever it takes to get you back on track. But the fact is, it doesn't really matter which direction we're going. And not just because of the GPS, but just because it just doesn't matter. What matters is what's working for us. I mean, if I actually feel better driving through Canada to get to Los Angeles, then drive through Canada to go to Los Angeles. Who cares if it takes longer? It doesn't really matter. What matters is I enjoy going through Canada. Or if I prefer to go through, the South, the deep South to get to Los Angeles, then I prefer to go through the deep South. Who cares if it's not a direct route?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's no one judging us. We can't. That's why I put in that definition of the podcast today, in the little blurb, I said, we're not wrong.
Right.
No matter how we do it, because, sometimes we might feel sad about our sadness or angry about our anger, but that's something that we've that we've also chosen to do, and we can then take and do something with that too. We can say, well, that's just another feeling I'm having on top of the other one. And so I can also let myself feel that one and let it be my emotional guidance system. It's going to guide me back too. So, no matter what we do with something, there's always a way to get back in alignment. There's always a way to get back to the feeling of feeling good. It's just that sometimes we just, I personally don't want to keep shooting myself in the foot, so to speak, or adding injury to insult by creating a worse feeling story about a feeling I'm having.
Yeah, I don't think any of us really like that too much. You're right.
But yeah, we tend to do that sometimes.
We often do. It's true, but nevertheless, like you say, there are a lot of strategies, and I like the fact that there are a lot of strategies. I mean, I remember when I first started being exposed to the law of attraction, trying to understand how to make any of it work. And, the first few times I heard strategies, I would try them and they wouldn't work for me. And I think, oh God, this stuff must be a bunch of baloney. It must not actually work. But then I'd hear the stories from people that it was working with, and I'd say, well, why isn't it working for me? And eventually I kind of stumbled along and realized at some point there were other processes. There were other things we could do to get ourselves back into alignment. First of all, actually, there was also the question of getting into alignment. I didn't even know about alignment at first. That one was new to me too, But once I found out about that, then it was about, well, okay, how do you get back into alignment? And that's when this whole stream of different opportunities came to me in my experience. Like, I'd read things or I'd talk to people or whatever, and you could do this, you can do that, you can do the other thing. Oh my God, there's a whole smorgasbord of options about how I can get myself back into alignment. Cool. Now I can pick the one that works for me. And that's ultimately where things started to turn around for me the fastest, just by realizing there are all these different options. And that's a great thing.
Yeah, that helped me a whole lot too.
Yeah.
I definitely did the same thing. And that changed my life dramatically when I started realizing that how much control I really had.
Yeah.
And how easy I could make those transitions for myself to come back into alignment, come back into feeling good. But there's just a deeper thing right now for me, which is I've learned from a really good friend of mine that I can dissipate. I mean, feelings that have plagued me for a long time of, say, returning to that feeling of terror in my gut. That can eventually dissipate to where it just won't happen anymore. It can, the dissipation of things that have plagued us for a long time in our lives. Why can't I get to the place where I can have a relationship? Or how can I ever overcome this condition in my body that gives me these symptoms that I hate so much? And, and we know that the basis of it is emotions, that the basis of it is feelings, as the basis of it is a mental emotional pattern that we're running on ourselves somehow. And so how can we finally let it dissipate? That's what I'm looking at now in my life.
Well, that's just it. We're trying to dissipate stuff, and dissipating. I like that word.
I do too.
I like the word because when stuff dissipates, it's a way of almost visually seeing it, or experiencing the releasing of something. Because when we release it, it seems like it dissipates. It seems like it just kind of disappears into little sparkles or something.
Yeah, let it fade away. It's sort of like a rainstorm ending, and it's. The rain was just constant, and then it dissipated, and now it's gone.
Yeah, and that's a big thing is understanding through experiencing the release of something, and experiencing what it's like before the release, during the release, and after the release. That's huge because as we recognize that happening more and more in our lives, it gives us a database, so to speak, of experiences, and the more experiences we have in releasing, then it seems like it's easier to release over time.
And I'm always looking for the thing that really works for me, and right now I'm onto this thing of feeling feelings, like letting them be and letting them be my emotional guidance system. And look, it'll take me back into alignment. All I got to do is just be easy about it instead of stressing out about it and turn it into a big drama inside myself and having a second reaction and a third reaction to it. Just, let it be, and it will guide me and I'll be fine. And then, what my friend is saying, that then that thing will eventually no longer plague you. You'll sort of play it out, and it will, because it was coming, sometimes they say, from something that was locked in there when we were a lot younger. And so it's sort of like an inner child that has a tremendous amount of fear. And when you finally just let it, you love it, you take it into your heart and you allow it to be there, and you surround it with love, and you say, it's okay that I have this feeling. It's okay that I feel terror. It's okay that I feel this strong anger. I'm just going to let it be right now. And it's welcome at my fire. It's a giant monster. It's like it doesn't fit in with the rest of my good feelings here. And we got joy over here. We got happiness over there. And then there's this huge giant monster sitting there called terror, but you're welcome here too. And then, one day you look back over at it and it's a little child too. And you go, oh, everything was, not as terrible as I thought it was,
Yeah. That's a fascinating topic, that's for sure. By the way, we have just a few minutes left. I want to get a couple messages in. First message, if you're not yet a subscriber, and maybe this is your first episode, and if you're liking it, you're going to like all the episodes, and we do 11 of them a week. So take a moment and go to our homepage at loatoday.net, and you will see exactly how to subscribe using whatever device you use. You can also just go direct. I mean, if you're on an iPhone, for instance, or an iPad, just go to your podcast software that's built in with the operating system. And inside that podcast software, you'll see a magnifying glass that allows you to search for LOA Today. It'll pop right up. You click the subscribe button, and then you get all of our episodes. Similarly, on the Android, same thing, except that there's not a built-in podcast software, but that's okay. Just go to the Play Store because you can find a whole bunch of them out there. Pick the one that you like. Some of them are free, some of them have a fee, but do whichever one you want. Download it, install it, and then open that up. And again, you'll be able to do a search for LOA Today. So whatever way you do it, become a subscriber, because that way you get all these terrific, uplifting, feel good, make your daily dose of happy episodes coming to your smartphone or to your device every single day. And for those of you who are already subscribers, we're also urging you, put out a note so that more and more people find it, because there's so many millions of people who don't even know about LOA Today yet. And you can see how much it's doing for you. Well, share the good news. Put it out on social media. Include the phrase loatoday.net and let more and more people be a part of it. And then finally, if it ever moves you, I mean, Tom, we actually had a couple of contacts just in the past few days from people who are listeners. One of whom actually, I didn't send this one to you, but one said that he wanted to be on the show as like a co-host. And I don't really have an opening for a co-host right now, but you don't have to be a co-host to be part of the show. You can call in as a listener. And that's what I told him. I said, give us a call. We love having people call in. And all the instructions on how to do that are on the homepage at loatoday.net. There's a phone number you can call in the U.S. There are phone numbers internationally. You can also connect through the Zoom platform that we use when we do the thing and when we do the podcast, and you can become a part that way. Lots of ways to connect, but call in because we love to talk to you. I mean, it's you know what it's like, Tom. It's so much fun.
How do they find the phone number?
The phone number is right on the homepage of loatoday.net. I can actually read it to people if you want me to read it to you. Let's see. The phone number to call here in the U.S. is area code 646-876-9923. That's 646-876-9923. And then there's an access code, which also sounds like a phone number. The access code is 860-264-5432. So that combination, if you're not going by phone, but you have a device you want to connect to talk to us, that's the way to get in. Or I'm sorry, that is with a phone. If you want to do it with a device, then you do it through the Zoom platform. But whichever way you want to do it.
Just go to the homepage of LOA Today.
It's all right there. It's all
phone number
explained.
and the access code will be there.
Everything's right there. Yep, the whole thing is there. Linked to the Zoom platform. Everything right there. But. Cool. So, Tom, this has been great. The only sad part is we have to draw it to a close with the hour drawing to a close. But I look forward to talking to you on Friday.
Yeah, we'll see where we go on Friday.
And quickly, how does somebody reach you in case they want private coaching?
I offer a free half hour of coaching to see if you enjoy the possibility of coaching with me. You can go to my website, which is youarejoy, youarejoy.com. And there's a little thing in the menu there to sign up for a free half hour. You just click on that page and sign up.
Sounds great. And we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.